which is the oldest Baptist church in the state of Georgia. And yeah, we've been serving. And you know, I went for a long time there and managed to avoid it. But I think my brother's son summed it up. He said, "Uncle Rick, it's just in our DNA." And we just can't continue with things the way they are. We got to try to get in and make a difference. And that's what I'm all about, folks. You know, I'm not a politician. Don't claim to be one. I've never served in public office. Of course, I ran last term, as many of you are familiar. And it's a big advantage to be the only candidate from the last cycle running. I'll tell you a little bit about how our campaign's going. We're trying to be good in everything, and one thing we're doing that just, I mean, I can't get my arms around it, is this digital piece of the campaign. We're over 120,000 Facebook likes. We lead the nation. I mean, it's, in fact, there are folks calling our digital folks saying, "How are we doing this?" And I think, too, there's a lot of interest in the race. There's a lot of interest in people like me who are willing to do this, who have proven long-time business experience. Because, folks, as you know, Robin and I took our savings when we were 25 years old and started a small construction business. And I'd like to say that it's been a lot of fun, and it has, but I can tell you, you know, about every 7 years, which is biblical, by the way, we've had a recession in this country. And this last one, we're still not out of the woods. But in 1992, we had a major client that went bankrupt, owed us $1 million. And frankly, I was advised to throw in the towel, that it was going to be very difficult to overcome that. And only by the grace of God, in fact, that was my first real prayer life. I was on my knees a lot there for about 2 years, and we made it through that. And of course, since then, the transfer of the ownership of the company to the younger generation, and they're doing great. The only thing they need is for the economy to improve, because I'm telling y'all, the last 5 years has been most difficult in every area. But going back to the campaign, we are out there today in Statesboro and Columbia County knocking on doors. We'll probably knock on several hundred doors today, getting feedback on our campaign. So far, I will tell you, the feedback has been excellent. We're in the office making phone calls, and our polling, we did a poll in January. We did a poll both for the primary race and the general race. And in the primary, we've got a little north of 40% of the vote right now, which is a good spot to be in. And that's with 38% undecided. So I need your help to get half of that undecided vote. We can avoid a runoff in this primary, which would be a huge accomplishment. But we're working hard to do that. And like I said, there were some other great things about name ID, because we're the only candidate that ran last time, which is good. It's over 70%, and we have not paid $1 for any type of voter ID. And our unfavorables were less than 8%. I mean, Mickey Mouse has a 5% unfavorable. Okay, so we were right there with Mickey. And so I couldn't be happier with the way things are going. As far as Robin and I, obviously, you know, we started the company, and of course, a few years ago, actually 7 years ago now, we transferred the ownership of that company to the next generation, and that's been a long-term process. It's been a great process, and we got some great folks. In fact, it really hurt my feelings because they're doing much better than I did. And they don't really need me. I mean, I thought I was the deal closer, you know, and they're just closing, they're doing great. And so we're tickled to death. And I know things are good, are going well here in Burke County. I mean, we had a little time to ride around, and And my brother, he made the comment, he said, you know, they're doing it right down here. You got some great facilities. I wrote about the new sheriff's office, of course, VOTEC, and of course, these 2 units at Plant Vogel. Boy, is that important to our energy needs here in the future. So you got to be excited in Burke County, but you know it's not like that in the rest of the district. Many areas of the district are hurting. Many areas in Richmond County are hurting. And, you know, for 2.5 centuries, this country was the envy of the world. And I want to ask you today, what in the world has happened? Have you ever thought about just exactly how we got like this? You know, we ask the question, are we not smart enough? I don't think so. Do we not work hard enough? You know, I don't know if y'all read it, but every year we're more productive than the previous year. I think it all boils down to leadership. I know it does with a business, particularly when you have a proven business, a long-term record in the business community, or basically if you look at anything someone's been involved in and they left it better than they found it, that's leadership. And that's what we need in Washington. The one thing that I never understood about Washington and people ask me this question, how have you survived? You know, construction is the #2 most risky business. Restaurants are #1. Any of y'all in the restaurant business? Yeah. But restaurants are number 1, construction's #2. And people have asked me, how have you made it 35 years? And the only thing I can think of is that, and I learned this on the farm growing up, is that, you know, I never have asked anybody to do anything that I wasn't willing to do myself. You know, the military, how many folks we got, the veterans and military we got in here? Thank you so much for your service. Military is service above self. We don't have that in the United States Congress, folks. We got too many self-serving leaders. They're making laws in Congress they don't have to live under. That is the worst leadership example in the history of civilization. And it's got to change. I mean, why do they have such a low approval rating, for crying out loud? You know, if I ran my company the way Congress runs this country, well, yeah, exactly. You answered it before I got it out of my mouth. So y'all know what works. Y'all know what's going on. You know, Robin and I have been attending the same church for over 40 years. We've raised 4 children in that church. And y'all, I am a proud daddy. And because those kids got a good mama. But they're doing great. They're all very happily married. They're all gainfully employed, which is, boy, that's a victory in this day and time. And we've got 6 grandchildren. And we've got 1 on the way. Let me tell you why I'm running for the United States Congress, folks. That child's going to be born in April. It's going to go owe $50,000. That's morally wrong. And that's why I'm running for the United States Congress. Proverbs says, a good man leaves an inheritance for his children's children. What are we going to leave to our children and grandchildren? We will be the first generation to lead this country and worship than any generation before us inherited. That is why I am running for the United States Congress. How many of you have worked in the community here to try to make your community a better place to live? All of you. You know, I like to think I made a difference in our community. I was one of those people I couldn't say no. I mean, if there was a need, you know, I like to help folks. And I got out, and the one thing I realized in working in the community is that we could solve our problems. We made a lot of progress. We helped a lot of people. We helped a lot of people get off government addiction. But you know what? I found that we can't help enough people or help more people and solve more problems than Washington is creating with all of these social experiments. So that's got to stop. We got 92 million people sitting on the sidelines. We were created to work. And I think it's an injustice to those people to provide a way for them not to work. I think we need to provide an opportunity for them to dignify themselves. Most people identify themselves with their work. And we need to get our folks in this country back to work. That would solve most of the problems, or a lot of the problems with our deaths right there. And how do we do that? We got to get the economy growing, and we've got the president with his foot on the brake and the Fed their foot on the accelerator. We've put $4 trillion into this economy, and it's going along. People say, well, it's not that bad, it's getting better. And let me tell you, folks, I don't see it. We're not out of the woods by a long shot. And if we don't change our policies and the way we're doing business, we're in for another round. And so we've got to roll up our sleeves, and we've got to deregulate. We've got to become energy independent. God has given us all these ways out. I mean, can you imagine a country energy independent, a continent energy independent? Would that solve a lot of our foreign relations problems right now? Huh? Think about it. Where do most of our problems come from? Wouldn't that be great? And we can do this, folks. Bottom line is, we're better than this. Sadly, the Democrats believe in big government. They believe the government provides employment. They believe the government provides health care. Obamacare is the worst legislation ever written. It was not bipartisan. Not one Republican voted for Obamacare. And we can see its demise right now because this government, we know there's a lot of things this government can't do and it's not doing a very good job. Or I'll tell you what, can anybody name me one thing that this government has done really well other than, we got the greatest military in the world? Tell me one other thing that our government's done and done very, very well and efficiently. I mean, why do we send $1 to Washington and get 25 cents back with all these strings attached? That makes no sense. We can solve health care right here in Burke County, in Augusta, in the 12th District, and in the state of Georgia. It's too big for Washington. What I'd love to see is the states compete in health care. Yeah. Wouldn't that be neat? Yeah. Can you imagine, we compete in jobs, creating jobs. We're very competitive in the state of Georgia. In fact, we just became the #1 state to locate a business in the state of Georgia. Why would we be the number one place to live? Because we got the healthiest folks. And we can do that, y'all. Well, let me wrap up with this. Obviously, what I'm best at is solving problems. And so in fact, a lady wrote me a note, and she said, you sound like you're a solution looking for a problem. And I said, you got it. And that's what we do, and that's what we do every day in business. And I can't wait to get to Washington and get my arms around this thing and build some consensus, and let's solve some of these problems, quit kicking this can down the road. A lot of people think that it can't change. And I don't believe that. We've been through a lot in this country. It's been a tough spell this last 5 years, but I'm going to tell you, my mom and daddy told me about what they went through in the Depression. That was tough, y'all. World War II, my daddy went off to war. He was born in 42. He didn't see my dad until 1945. Never saw my dad, 1945. I mean, that's tough, real tough. So, how do we do it? What do we do? I think we look back in history. In a small room in Philadelphia, 237 years ago, our forefathers sat in a room. First thing they did was pray. and then they read some scripture. And by the grace of God, they created the greatest living document in history of civilization. No other document, our Constitution, no other document in the world has lasted 237 years. And we got that right here in this country. We've got the recipe. Everybody in this room knows what works. We got to get back to what works. I appreciate your attention this morning. I'm Rick Allen. I'm running for the United States Congress, and I'm a solution looking for a problem. And I appreciate your attention this morning.
In the construction business is often that is the business, is solving problems.
Right.
And once you get in there and think, I'm going to build this thing, it turns out the structure you're building builds you, your character.
Yeah, I've always said, you know, some of the guys say, man, I tell you, I don't know how we're going to do this. And I said, well, that's why we get paid, folks. If we didn't have any problems, they wouldn't need us, you know. But yeah, and we can solve these problems.
You got to come together.
Yes, sir.
Republicans.
Yes, sir. We've got to build unity in the party. And frankly, you know, people ask me this question, would you vote for our current leadership? Well, you know what? Our current leadership is not on the ballot in November. John Barrow's on the ballot in November. I'm going to deal with John Barrow first, and then I'll deal with leadership. But to be out here and trashing our leadership and our party in a primary election, just, you know, well, it's not biblical, number one, because, you know, God put those folks in authority over us. And number two is, you know, like I said, I think you got to focus on well, let me just tell you this, to solve problems, you got to focus on the problem at hand. And, you know, John Barrett's a fine man. He's done he is, everybody says he's everywhere and all this. But John just had, you know, when John went into Congress, we were spending $2.3 trillion a year. We just spent $3.7 trillion. You know, we took in $2.8 trillion. So I look at it and I say, no, well, we have a revenue problem here. We got a spending problem. How in the world does this thing get out of whack so bad? And you know, those are the people we need in the United States Congress. They can get their arms around this thing like we do in a business. And as they say, get the right people on the bus, and get them in the right seats. It's amazing what you can do.
Do you have any general questions from the floor? I'll start off. You mentioned on your flyer about term limits.
Mm-hmm.
How are term limits changed? Both the House and the Senate have to agree to that?
Yeah.
Aren't senators elected for life?
I think Strom Thurmond thought that way. You know, they had to wheel him in a stretcher, I think, to vote. But
they found one of his campaign buttons in the Humvee.
Yeah. You know, I did some research on this because I like to do research before you know, I look at an issue. And do you know why it's a 2-year term in the House? Because the House kind of is, you know, of course, before it was appointed in the Senate, your 6-year term. But the fact was, even our own signer of the Declaration of Independence said, I can't serve 2 years. You know, I'm a working man.
Yeah, right.
I got to work for a living. He said, I'll go up there a year. He ended up staying 2 years. But before, while we were in an agrarian economy up until the 1900s, people only served 2 years, and they came home.
It wasn't a profession.
Exactly. Why did it become a profession? And of course, then you got the situation where people are kicking the can down the road. The biggest problem in Washington. People are kicking the can down the road to preserve their job. And you can't make the right decisions to do that. And then they tend to make it difficult on everybody else. You know, in the business world, you know, if you're gonna make it in the business world, you got to be the first one to take the hit. You don't tell them. You don't tell your folks that answer to you. Say, well, you're gonna take a hit down here, and I'm up here. It doesn't work that way, folks. You take the hit first, and that's real leadership. I've asked folks and just talked about term limits, and this is the way I feel about it. If you'll give me 8 years, and I can't turn this thing around, or help turn this thing around, I'm coming home. Because one is, if it's not going in the right direction, I'm gonna be so frustrated that I won't be able to carry on, and I refuse to do something and not accomplish something. I just can't sit there and just watch this thing unfold.
And I think the junior members that are elected and go in are intimidated by the senior members of their own party.
The hierarchy.
You know, and I don't understand also if, I of course appreciate you going, but how are we going to turn around, for instance, just for them to live under the same health system that we're living under? And I think that should be.
Yeah, that'll tell you something about Obamacare. They're exempting themselves from it. I mean, yes. Again, the Congress does not live under the laws that they create. And I don't know of a leadership example anywhere that like that. And I think that's probably why this is not working in this country. Our forefathers did not design it this way. It was not to be a career. It was you go serve your country. And you do your best to preserve the country, to do the right thing. And there's no way this government was designed to be in every area of our lives. And, because like I said, what I've discovered is on the local level, we do a really good job of that. And I think, the government gets involved when it's a fairness issue, and I understand that. I've said it at every stop. It's time for people to get back to helping people and businesses creating jobs. That's what work is about.
Maybe somebody might have a question on their mind about we'll call it the Affordable Care Act. And my question is, as I see this, your campaign unfolding, say further down the road,
right,
when you're debating or campaigning against John Barrow, is that he purports that he voted against the law itself.
He did.
Subtly.
Yeah.
It might have been one of those situations where, his vote wasn't needed.
Yeah.
We don't know that.
Yeah.
But he goes back to 2 points about the law, and that is the elimination of the pre-existing condition clauses in health insurance contracts, and the elevation of coverage to children up to 26 years of age. If the law is repealed, we all lose those two things.
Exactly.
If we really need it. But anyway, how would you approach that argument? Is it an argument of repealing? Is it an argument of changing some of the basic tenets of the law itself without removing those two things? Although someone brought up a point, here's how it could affect every taxpayer's pocketbook. You go into the Affordable Care Act, get a health insurance plan, drop off of it. 6 months later, you could literally sign up for it again in the ambulance on the way to the hospital without a pre-existing condition.
Yeah.
Now, in the long run, where does the money come? Because there's no money going in the pool to pay for that. At least that individual is not. Is that possible under this law, that you can go in and out of it?
No, and the reason it's not possible is you can't pay for it. As I understand John's position, I haven't talked to John directly about this, but as I understand his position, and he has written the president asking the president to do away with the mandates. Well, the mandates were designed for young people, these folks right here, to pay. A young person, their health cost is roughly average $300 per year, and they were being asked to pay $4,000 or $5,000 a year plus a $5,000 deductible. And so the burden of paying for this massive health care program was going to fall on our young people. And John is against that. Well, the thing that John has never addressed is this runaway spending in Washington. I've never heard him address that anywhere, or call for a balanced budget, or vetoed one of the president's spending bills. He voted for the stimulus, but the stimulus package was awful. We've been much better putting that money in the pockets of Americans. That would have stimulated the economy far more than the president and his pet projects. You know, the healthcare law's got to go. Now, pre-existing conditions, you know, we need to take that up. But I've got a model that is a model for America. Right now, we have it right there in Augusta, Georgia, and that's Christ Community Health Services. Those folks, they call themselves poorly paid doctors and well-paid missionaries. And they take care of folks no matter who they are. You got to pay like $5 copay to go in there. The great thing about this is just not a clinic where they give you a few meds and say, okay, try this and see if it works. They say, you're my patient. Just like I have my doctor. These folks who walk in off the street, I'm your doctor. And don't go to the emergency room if you're not feeling well. You call me.